With more and more women putting off having children and couples taking their time to start a family, egg freezing has become more and more common, an insurance policy that can better ensure conception the moment is right. Well, let's welcome Dr. Carrie Riestenberg, Reproductive Endocrinologist at Coastal Fertility Specialists, who's here to share her journey in freezing her eggs. Great to have you with us. This subject fascinates me because it is true. A lot of friends of mine are just waiting and putting that motherhood off. But when did you decide that it was time for you to start freezing your eggs?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really passionate about this topic. I was in fellowship, so doing the last 3 years of my training, and I was turning 33 and recently out of a long-term relationship. And that's really when I decided that I knew I wasn't going to be starting my family for another few years. I was approaching my mid-30s, and I decided that I wanted to make this investment so that I'd hopefully be able to have my own biological children in the future.
And what is the typical age that women start freezing their eggs, when they should start freezing their eggs?
It's the golden question. There have been studies looking at when the optimal time is. Some studies say mid-30s. Really, we know though that the earlier you freeze, the higher the chances that you're going to be able to have children with those eggs down the line. So I really encourage patients in their early to mid-30s, if they know they're deferring, starting their families for personal, professional reasons or health reasons.
And I hate putting it this way, but is there an expiration once you have frozen your eggs that they can last just so long before you actually decide to pull the trigger and have children? So
the good news there is that not really. As far as we can tell, eggs can be frozen pretty much indefinitely, and the likelihood of being able to have a pregnancy with them does not really decline over time once they're frozen.
Okay. I think a lot of people, though, are a little, I wouldn't say skeptical, but maybe put off by the cost of freezing eggs. So once upon a time, it was very expensive to do that, but you say that it's gotten a little bit more affordable over time?
It has, fortunately. So it's a relatively new technology. It was just made non-experimental in 2013. So since that time, more and more insurance companies have come to cover it, and the cost has come down now that the technology is more utilized and more widespread. So these days, I'd say the average cost is $6,000 to $7,000 plus the cost of medications.
That's all in?
That's all in, and then storage fees annually are probably in the range of $500 or so per year. It does depend on the clinic that you're at, but those are kind of ballpark numbers.
What about women who have frozen their eggs, and let's say they've done so for 10 years, and then they finally decide that they're ready to start a family, but now they're in their 40s. Is it still safe for a woman to carry a child at that age, or is it still the longer you wait, the riskier it becomes?
There certainly are increased risks with what we call advanced maternal age, so 35 and over, and I fall into that category. So, but overall, as long as you're healthy, and we do a checklist for patients, a health checklist, most women can carry up to the age of 51, or even the American Society of Reproductive Medicine says up to the age of 55, as long as they're otherwise healthy.
That's incredible. And I want to get into the moral aspect of it in just a moment, but when we're also talking about freezing embryos, so a couple, they come together, they decide that they want to have children at some point, but does that change the cost? Does it change the process?
It does. So if I have a couple coming to me desiring fertility preservation because they know they're not going to start their family for several years, then we will make embryos usually. That's usually the better option. Embryos do a little bit better when they freeze and thaw, and we also know more about what we have in the freezer when embryos are made. So that is one option. Alternatively, actually, as I did, I froze my eggs initially, and then once I had my partner a couple years later, I went back and thawed those eggs and made embryos, and now those are in the freezer for baby number 2.
Good. Wow. For baby number 2.
Yes.
So already put together.
Yes.
And just ready now for the right time, right?
Yes.
And generally speaking, the attempts that it takes to conceive. So it's not a for sure thing. So you can freeze your eggs, you can freeze your embryos, you implant them, but there's no guarantee that it's going to materialize into a pregnancy.
Absolutely, and that's a really important point. I think a lot of patients come expressing that this is an insurance policy, and I like to tell them, you know, insurance is supposed to really be there for you 100%. This is increasing your chances of being able to have biologic children, but it's not 100%. And there are some really good online calculators where you can input your age and the number of anticipated eggs frozen, and it gives you an estimation of the probability of being able to have 1, 2, or 3 children, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, and then once it comes time to implant the eggs or the embryos, you hear of these multiple pregnancies taking place. So I mean, it's a possibility. You could be budgeting for 1 and you could get 3 or 4.
Yes, so it is a possibility. Fortunately, now that our technology is so much better and our pregnancy rates are so good with the transfer of 1 embryo at a time, we really only transfer 1, max 2 embryos at a time these days. So that's why we see a declining multiple gestation rate, which is a good thing for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we've heard the stories. I won't even mention them, but I want to thank you so much for being so candid with your story, and for people who are interested in exploring this journey, where should they go?
Thank you. Oh, yes. So I work at Coastal Fertility Specialists. There are 5 fantastic physicians. We have multiple locations in the Charleston area and elsewhere, and we'd love to take care of you. So come see us.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Doctor.
you.
Appreciate it. We're back in 2 minutes.